Hey guys, welcome to Digit.in, and this is a tech story even though I am standing in a designer store. And the man behind this store not only has designer clothes but also some state-of-the-art audio equipment, and we aren't only going to listen to it but get you some great buying advice as well. And his name is Abhishek Gupta, and we're going to have a quick chat with him.
Abhishek Gupta. I started as a fashion designer almost 15 years back. I studied at NIFT. This is a business that we've been doing for a long time. My wife, Nanita Basu, is also a designer. I have a store at Emporio, and this is a new store we are launching at Defense Colony for my main line of Indian clothes that I do for men and women.
So Abhishek, to begin with, tell us why is there a state-of-the-art audio demo room in the middle of a fashion clothing store?
You know, as long as I can remember, audio has been something that really interested me. It started with my brother asking me to set up a system almost 20 years back, where he gave me a budget at that time was phenomenal. And I remember when I started reading up or trying to find out what is the best system to put up together, I think I was bitten by that bug way back 20 years back. All my reading was audio and high-end, audio acoustics engineering, audio. I used to feel damn guilty about it. My wife used to come and say that, you're at work and you're reading audio. And I would imagine that about 5 or 6 years back, I'd come to a point where I was already advising my friends as to what they should set up in terms of home theaters or setting up an audio system. I would spend all my money that I had left on audio systems. And it was a natural progression. It came to a point where I set up a few systems for friends and extended family with some fantastic results. And what started happening was that, I started getting more and more inquiries, and I realized that I couldn't be doing it unless it was an active part of my profession. So about 4 years back, I took on my first consultancy job to set up a home theater for a friend. And it gave me great results, and it was an additional revenue stream. And more importantly, I set out saying that everything that I make from this, I'll be able to invest in having a better audio system for myself. So there's a huge incentive there. It's been overwhelming how starting out setting up systems for people within 3 or 4 lakh rupee budget has led me to a point where I was fortunate to get from friends and people from word of mouth set up systems which go up to 1 crore and a half. So I think in the last 2 or 3 years the growth has been phenomenal. 3 years back I first visited Munich, which is the mecca for, it's like it's like Paris Fashion Week for audio. It's called Munich High-End, and I think that's when I started really understanding what high-end audio meant for me. Because I think it's a very personal journey. It's much like any form of anything that stimulates your senses. There is no absolute. You can't say this is the best wine or this is the best movie or this is the best song, because it involves your interaction with that medium. And I think for high-end audio, it stops being technical at some level. It becomes a huge passion, and then you go into the finer details, trying to extract that 1% performance that you can, and becomes almost an obsession. Like for instance, if you have a speaker, you need an amplifier that will drive it to its optimum. So the two things, it's a handshake. You have to be able to match equipment to bring out the best of each other and maybe take care of the shortcomings. Yeah. And eventually what it really means is that, what I really love about audio is that audio is just a medium that puts you closer at a much more emotional level with the content, which is music. And actually, at the end of the day, I consider myself a music lover, because without most people, a lot of audiophiles face this problem, is that they love great sound, but they don't know what music they like. So if you don't have something that you love in terms of music, you'll really be shortchanged, because it's a journey without a name, without a destination. The ultimate goal is to be able to connect with your music at a more emotional, more intimate level, where it can uplift you. And I think it's very important to start understanding that aspect, and that's when you start understanding that digital medium can lead you to a certain extent, and why LPs are so important, because all the recordings which were done in 50s, 60s, 70s, the best engineers were actually there for making the best LPs. Those recordings converted to digital will never sound as good on digital. Today, a lot of R&D has gone into making digital recordings better. So my point is that at the end of the day, you find certain music which is great on LP, certain music which is great on digital, but at the end of the day, it's the music that really matters. Yeah. And that's been my journey. And that's why, to answer the question in so many words, I realized that audio is something which is a very integral part of my life, and it became a very important aspect of my business. And then I realized that, if I have to open a store, would I want to do it separately? I said, no, maybe it's a good idea to combine the two, simply because at the end of the day, we are targeting the same audience. It's a high net worth individual who is interested in something special, something that has been made or delivered with a lot of passion. It's the same thing with clothing and the same thing with audio.
Okay, so audio is something that's very, very subjective to people. It's something that I might like listening to. You might think it's a little different, or something that you think is great might sound a little different to me. I'm pretty sure you've seen these hurdles with some of your clients as well.
Absolutely.
So can you elaborate on any of these situations that you've faced a discrepancy with your audience, and then how you've convinced them to go with a certain kind of equipment?
Well, see, the thing is, the first thing that I always try and understand when I enter a project, or if I'm setting up a system, is to understand the person's lifestyle and the taste in music. Because what's very important is that, there's certain high-grade audiophile systems at phenomenal prices, which might deliver the optimum sound quality with maybe 5 different genres or all genres of music. But if you were to say that, okay, I like strings and vocals and jazz music, I might be able to give you a solution that will sound fantastic with that, as long as you're not trying to play disco music on it, or electronic music on it, or for that matter, classical. So the first hurdle is to understand what music you like listening to, and you're willing to compromise the performance with other genres of music, because that very genre is most important. And then you can have a solution which costs a fraction and give you great results. Whereas trying to do everything well, master of all trades, would be phenomenally expensive. So that's one aspect. The second thing which I always tell my clients is that, you have to understand that when you get a good system, what's very important is to have good content, because when you're able to see clearly, you're able to see the flaws of the recording as well. So no more MP3s, no more iTunes downloads. Get back to your CDs, hunt out your old LP collection. It's very important to go uncompressed. It's very, very important to have good content, because your bad content will sound worse on a good system than it'd be on a good system, on a bad one. Because ordinary systems are primarily designed to conceal the qualities of a poor recording. And as a result, they are also unable to give you the goods with a good recording. So content is very important. But at the end of the day, I think it's very important to not lose focus of the music. It's very important that the person makes an effort in collecting or collating the music that they truly love in an uncompressed format, or in the form of an LP, to be able to really enjoy the music.
So a premium home theater out of the box, or a DIY, or assemble it yourself, which one would you recommend and why?
It really boils down to budget. Sometimes what an out-of-box system can do for you is great, because if you're not a techie, if you're not inclined towards changing cables or experimenting with things, then by all means an out-of-the-box system, because everything else that you do becomes trouble. you don't want to trouble a client. You want them to have the convenience of playing back something which plays beautifully. But if you're interested, then you cannot get a system all in one kind of a system, because it's just very limiting. They're designed for being able to give you a certain amount of performance at a budget. But obviously, if you want something more than that, it has to be components that are put together. And I don't mean DIY. DIY is commonly misunderstood. DIY is another game altogether, where do-it-yourself means you're buying components, you're not buying a speaker, you're buying drivers and then buying a separate box and putting the whole speaker together. That form of DIY is a whole different story, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, this is more of home theater in a box versus buying 5 different speakers, yes, a different subwoofer, a different amplifier, different cabling.
Correct.
Stuff like
so
that.
It's basically configuring a system with existing equipment that you might have heard about or might have experienced. So definitely that is the route to go, because you cannot expect one company to make all components well. Mostly the R&D for each company is either in the speaker manufacturing, or in the amplifier manufacturing, or in handling data, which is basically it could be a transport, CD player, or DAC. A turntable manufacturer will not know anything about any of the other things that we discussed. So my point is that obviously you go for the best in each area which the company has their expertise in, and you put them together and you synergize them. It starts with that, but again, it's very important to not just be influenced by interviews and say, okay, you go and buy that and it's a great combination. Because sometimes, let's take an example. If you have 5-star reviews and you take 4 or 5 components and you put them together, I can guarantee you that I'll be able to set up a system with 3-star reviews. But as long as they're synergized better, I'll give you better results than all 5-star rated components. So the thing is, at the end of the day, it's very important. Reviews, yes, by all means, they matter, because it is able to tell you something that is worth looking at or not. I would say it's a process of elimination rather than your ultimate choice, because I would look at reviews to say, okay, maybe this product has got such poor reviews that we should not even consider it. Or maybe the top 3 reviews that we've heard, those are the speakers we must go and listen to. But don't make your choice based purely on that, because it'll never yield you results.
A subwoofer versus a classic setup, which is, let's say, bookshelf speakers, just 2 dedicated speakers itself. It's usually said that a subwoofer is like that stepson that you don't really need for a certain kind of a setup, but some people might just add it. So what's your opinion on adding a dedicated subwoofer to a 2-channel system?
I'll have to explain something very basic before I answer that question. Is that you do not need subwoofers for 2-channel systems. They are essentially designed for a multi-channel system or a surround sound setup. In a surround sound setup, the basic information is either 5.1 or 7.1. 0.1 being LFE, the low frequency effect, which is what the subwoofer is originally designed for. When you say a low frequency effect, basically it's frequencies below 80 Hertz. And that usually require a lot of power, and normal speakers aren't able to handle it. So in movie soundtracks, you have a LFE sound. It's a separate discrete channel that carries that information, only comes on during a scene that requires that low frequency information. And by all means, you cannot make a home theater without a subwoofer sound as good as the one with it. But having said this, for a 2-channel system, integrating a subwoofer within a 2-channel system with bookshelves is mostly a nightmare, because the alignment, the phase alignment, the time alignment of bass frequencies from a subwoofer and trying to integrate it with a bookshelf speaker is not going to yield you results. If you just want a party system that just goes loud and plays with a thump, by all means. But if you want an audiophile system that gets you closer to the music, it'll not work. So when I say this, I don't mean in absolute terms. If you are able to tune your subwoofer for a 2-channel system to give you the results, it can give great results. But tuning that is a real task. One thing I'd like to pay specific attention to when we're talking about adding subwoofers to a bookshelf speaker for a reinforced bass. understand one thing, that in most recordings, in most music recordings, there is no information below maybe 38 or 40 cycles. When I say that, it is deliberately done because all the pro systems that when you go for a live concert, the pro subwoofers don't even go below 35 or 38 hertz. A good subwoofer is essentially is designed to handle frequencies below that range, go all the way down to 20 hertz, which most people can't hear. Is just a rumble or a feeling, or to give you that sense of explosion. So having said that, if a speaker can handle anything up to 40-45 hertz, it'll most likely be able to give you a very satisfying bass response for music. So don't try and mix a subwoofer for music, because most times it'll be an artificial information that's going through the subwoofer.
Okay, now here's a little bit of buying advice that you need to give our viewers. If someone's going to go into a showroom tomorrow to buy either an out-of-the-box system or a custom-built system, but they are in the showroom, a few tips for them, what they can do when they're in front of the system before buying. So something that they can do in the showroom right there and then.
Well, see, it's very important. The easiest way that you can understand what a good recording is, one tip: get a good pair of headphones, which will not cost you a lot of money. Get an uncompressed.
On that?
Well, I'll give you a few. Shure is a very good company. Sennheiser makes decent headphones. But if you want to go absolutely for the best, Stax is a company which makes magnetic planar headphones. It's a company from Germany. From Japan. Absolutely the best. But we're not discussing headphones. What I meant to say is that you can get a basic good headphone from an Oppo or any or even Bose for that matter. And when you play even from your iPhone an uncompressed piece of music, a headphone is able to many times give you a sound reproduction that's much more accurate than a large system. It's very important for you to have uncompressed music. It's very important for you to understand the tonality of music that you like. Some people like their music very fast and very articulate, very lean. Some people like it warm and more organic. So it depends, and it depends on the kind of recordings that you're listening to. It depends on the kind of content that you want. The first thing is that you have, when you go to audition a system, have a point of reference, something that you're comparing it against. Because if you don't have a point of reference, it's impossible to say what is good or bad. For most people, when they say this is the best sound I've heard, it becomes their point of reference. So establish that point of reference either by getting a good pair of headphones or going to a setup which has been well designed. Understand what that system does for you, and then hear the same recordings when you're auditioning the new systems that you want to buy. Don't be driven by this system does bass very well, because most often systems that do bass very well, they can't do anything else very well. And most times that the artificial bloated bass that you hear from a lot of budget systems is a way of misleading you into making you feel that it's a better sound, but it's actually not accurate. So for anybody who's buying a system, you're all welcome to come and hear what a reference system sounds like. Establish that point of reference by going to a good showroom where something extraordinary, even if it's out of your league or budget, go and hear it just to understand what good sound actually is. And once you've understood what good sound is, then go and audition other things. So it's very important to have a point of reference before you go and buy, and have your own recordings. Listen to your own medium. Very often in showrooms, people have 5 or 6 tracks that they know that plays well and can impress somebody. So don't get fooled by that. Have your own content that you will go and say, play this, but make sure it's uncompressed. It's a original CD from a good pressing, and then go and hear it. Having heard it on a system that it completely floored you, and then compare it to the system that you're auditioning.
So what, according to you, is the best material used to build a tweeter? Now, we've heard of silk dome tweeters, we've heard of Kevlar also being used. When it comes to the materials used, according to you, which is the best and why?
Okay, silk dome tweeters are very popular. It's been extensively used by Dyno Audio. Kevlar is a material that's used not for tweeters but for mid-range and for woofers, for its strength and agility and being lightweight. Extensively used by B&W. But I'll simply say that materials are a marketing tool. There is no absolute. I do agree that certain diamond tweeters or mid-ranges that I've heard on a company called Tidal, it's a German company that makes high-end audio, are absolutely incredible. But most importantly, I think it's the implementation of how those drivers work within a system, matching of components, and very, very importantly, the design of the crossover that matters much more than the material used for the tweeter. Let's take an example. There are companies that make absolutely fantastic products where the materials are not publicized because they're not using it as a tool, but they've spent a lot of money on making sure that the crossover is right. It's a shorter signal path. You're not tampering with the handshake. The handshake between the frequencies of the mid-range tweeter and the woofer is well defined. So I think it's the overall design, because there are companies that make components like ScanSpeak, or CS. They make amazing components, but every company that uses those components doesn't necessarily make a speaker of the equal caliber, because the cabinet design, the crossover, internal wiring, the arrangement of how the drivers integrate with each other, those matter a lot more. In fact, for that matter, the port design, whether it's a ported speaker or for that matter the speaker that you see here, PMC, they use something called an advanced transmission line. Now the transmission line basically takes the rearward radiation of a speaker and brings it back to the front or in phase. So it gets a massive the bass in a PMC is massively reinforced by their port design. It's at the end of the day, its transmission line is also a port, but it's not a regular port. So the design and implementation of a speaker is not limited to the materials used for the drivers, and I wouldn't advise you to be fooled into that or buy a product because of a certain driver it has used. But having said that, try and experiment with products which are well engineered, and you'll realize that materials stop mattering. They do matter in absolute terms, but not at the stage we are looking at.
Okay, now if you were to recommend to someone, price is of course at your discretion, whatever price category you think seems fit. Which according to you would be the best brands or some of the best products to purchase in a specific budget? Let's stick to bookshelf speakers for this one.
When you talk about bookshelf speakers, I personally think the reason why bookshelf speakers are considered so good for music is because of the two-way arrangement. Having a three-way speaker means a more complicated design for the crossover. Sometimes what a two-way speaker can do is phenomenal. And in fact, my first speaker that actually showed me a window into what truly high-end audio meant was from PMC, and therefore the reason why I have PMCs here. Another great brand is ATC, Dyna Audio. Well, I wouldn't limit myself in naming brands because there are far too many brands that are out there with great products. And having said that, it's very important to look at the system as a whole. It's very important to look at the room size versus the size of the speaker that you're getting, because a small speaker will work great in a small room, but don't try and play it in a football field, because you'll be driving it too hard and getting nothing out of it. So it's very important to look at audio as a complete chain and not just a speaker or the driver component or the driver material or things in isolation. I think it's very important. That's what I understood when we're talking about Munich, or what performance actually meant, is how things work together. And having said that, it's very, very important to start looking at systems as a whole and not as individual components, because you'll never get the performance that you're seeking.
Okay, so we've spoken a lot about equipments, but like you said, the room size and the place you're going to listen to it matters the most. When someone is deciding to build either a home theater or a dedicated music listening room, or just have it as a part of their house, could you talk about a few things they should consider? Because we've seen a lot of times when somebody has a smaller room where a 2-channel setup, or let's say a sound bar, can get the job done, but they're very insistent, no, I want 5 speakers for the sound. You know, there are a lot of myths about the stuff, especially when it comes to the room that you're putting it in.
Correct.
Maybe somebody has a dedicated room like this for listening, but maybe somebody just wants it as a part of the living room. So a few tips to consider about your house and the way you've set up before investing in either a home theater or a music listening setup.
Well, see, the thing is that you have to first start with saying how important is music or movies to you. Most times I would recommend that I've tried it and failed and tried it again, succeeded to a certain extent and then failed again in trying to make a system that sounds great for movies and music. So I would say, first things first, don't try and keep a 2-channel system, don't try and keep a home theater that you listen to music on and say that, oh, you know, this is a system that plays music and movies well. In most cases, I can guarantee I'd be able to set up a system within the stipulated budget, a separate 2-channel system and a separate home theater system, versus using that entire budget for one single system that does home theater and this thing well. And you'll be surprised, the 2 separate systems at half the price would do a better job. So it's very important that if music is important to you, set up a separate 2-channel system. Don't confuse it with your home theater. Having said that, I would say for a home theater, you don't necessarily need very high quality components. It's very important to have adequate power. It's very important to have a clean sounding speaker and a good subwoofer for the right experience. It's not important to have an audiophile speaker for a home theater to sound good. But when I'm saying that, pay attention to what center speaker that you get, because the voicing of a center speaker, which gives you the vocals, is very important for that to be good. But most times you can get great results if you're on a budget with choosing correctly the components for a home theater setup, and a separate 2-channel setup is very, very important if you want to get close to your music.
So the system that you've set up in the demo room, can you walk us through what we have here?
Yeah, sure. So before I tell you about the specific components, I'd like to talk a little about what led to specifically this room. See, the one thing that I've always noticed when I'm traveling or trying to hear the best systems, either at audiophiles places or in showrooms or at shows, is the interaction of the components within a given space. We talked about room size. Now, it's very important to have the correct system for the correct room size for it to give you a certain quality. When I say that, what I mean is that if I was to put, see, the speakers that we have here are from PMC MB2 SEs. Now, if I was to place this speaker in a room half the size, it's going to load the room, and the bass is going to start exciting the room to an extent where, you know, everything will start sounding bloated or incorrect. So when I say this, I mean that the interaction of a particular kind of equipment within the given space is very important. And what we started out saying is that I want a demo room where I should be able to place a large speaker. And, you know, we always have this fascination about large speakers because, you know, the kind of scale and the drama, or, you know, in terms of the kind of impact a large system can have, it's impossible for a small one to do it, because, you know, it's simple physics. I mean, that much air has to be moved for a certain frequency to hit you in a certain way. For that, you know, the SPL has to be right, the room response has to be right. And when I say that, we said that, okay, we want a system that can sound good in a large room with a large speaker. But what is that large room going to be? So after a lot of research, and to be very honest, with the help from a few of my people who I work with, some distributors who are extremely knowledgeable, I'll name the person, Khushru Jilla. He's been somebody who I immensely respect, and he's taught me a lot. And he helped me come to a point where we decided that the room size is going to be about 15 feet by 18 feet, because you need that minimum close to 300 square foot space to be able to play a large speaker without loading a room. So that was the first decision. So this room dimension is 15 feet by 18 feet. And then how do you do the room acoustics? That's another. Most times you'll see rooms designed with too much absorption. The RT of a room just completely goes haywire. One of the best acousticians in this world, when I say that, I really do mean it. A gentleman called Weber Reiner. He is the chief acoustician at Continental Motors and also a partner and the chief acoustician at Kaiser Audio. Kaiser Audio incidentally makes speakers which are $500,000 and upwards. They have some of the best sounding speakers I've heard at Munich. And in fact, when I said that, that was when I first went to Munich, my journey began for high-end audio, because that when I heard the Kaisers, I realized what good sound really meant. So Khushru helped me get Reiner on board, because he's a distributor for Kaiser. And Reiner has actually designed this room with all the acoustic panels that you see, custom made, built to spec in Germany and then imported here. The diffuser that we have is a Spline diffuser, which is their it's a patented design. And all the panels that with micro perforations that you have, he works in a, I consider myself as somebody who knows a fair bit about audio. But when I start a conversation with him, really it's all Greek and Latin to me, because he's talking in a domain that, is really, really beyond our imagination. So he actually started out designing this room with every panel, every material in this room, each and every substance that has been used to create this room has been decided by him. It's made to spec, because that's the only way you can get the RT60 right in a room. And then the room response and everything else, he designed the room to the point where he said that it's designed for 4 people. When 4 people are sitting in this room, you'll get the best response. So that was the first part. And for him, it was very important to know what equipment I was going to put in the room, because it was the placement of the speakers or equipment within a room matters greatly. You move the speaker closer to the rear wall and you'll get boundary gain. You move yourself closer to the rear wall, you'll be in a pressure zone. Ideal seating position is 9 feet away from the rear wall, but you cannot achieve it in small rooms. But the way he designed the room is to give you an absolutely reference grade experience within a confined space. And that's how this whole process started. When we talk about the speakers and amplification, the speakers are from PMC, which is a professional monitor company. They make some of the best monitors in the world, which are extensively used all across the globe by some of the best musicians. And they also have a range of hi-fi products. This is an MB2 SE, which is from the SE range. This is a product which is placed squarely in the middle. They have a model below it and a few models above it. But this was the perfect size for this room to be able to give you an absolute experience. Being driven by Octave, who is, again, Octave is a German company. Hoffman is the chief designer who makes tube electronics. So the preamp is essentially a tube preamp. But what he says is that his equipment doesn't sound like tubes, because it's not designed. He says that he can deliver the best performance by using tubes, so he uses tubes. His aim is not to give a tubey sound, so it's a very, very accurate sound. The preamp is HP 700, which is a tube-loaded preamp. It has a state-of-the-art step-up transformer phono stage for a turntable. It has all balanced inputs which are transformer coupled, just to make sure that the input and output, the impedances are perfectly matched. The power amp is again from Octave. It's a set of monoblocks, MRE 220s, with a power bank called the Super Black Box. Together, on the charts, I mean, it's about 120 RMS, but it can drive speakers with very, very demanding loads. For the turntable here, I have a Clearaudio concept, which is a basic turntable. But I pride myself in saying that I've spent a lot of time in honing my skills on how to calibrate a turntable, because being a mechanical device, you know, if you're able to calibrate your turntable well, it can give you results which are far beyond the price category your turntable stands in. I'm using a ZYX cartridge, which is a low output moving coil cartridge. Then the CD player is from AVM. It's being used as a transport. It's going to a Staltech Opus DAC, which is, in my books, one of the best sounding DACs that I've heard. It's a reference grade DAC. The company is not existent anymore, but I hunted this one out and I got this specifically because I've not heard anything better than this. All the connections between the components are from Vandenhull. And very interesting point here, we've used a complete carbon chain. There is no metallic connection between the components. And that is one of the secrets which, you know, few people will tell you, but the fact is that every company uses different internal cabling. And by using a carbon chain, you are avoiding a lot of those problems. From the power amp to the speaker is a cable called the third, which is about 12 million strands of carbon woven together to form. It's a superconductor. It eliminates a lot of problems normally associated with cables. And finally, the power conditioner is from Isotech. And altogether, each component might be legendary in its own right, but the way the things come together is what really matters. And when you have the experience of the room, you know what I'm talking about.